Is following Jesus worth the cost? The John Emmanuel story. We serve a God who looks at the valley of dry bones and imagines an army. We serve a God who looks at a broken life and sees a masterpiece. Today's episode is living, breathing proof of that truth. Our guest today is John Emmanuel. At one time, John's life was defined by the streets, gang culture, and survival. He was trapped in a world where loyalty was demanded and violence was the language. But God had a different vision for his life. In a moment of radical grace, John went from a gangbanger to a devoted follower of Jesus Christ. My name is Omarrogers, also known as the Faith Professor, and I'm the founder of Imagination and Faith Ministries, and I want to thank you for joining me for this week's podcast. Is following Jesus worth the cost? John Emmanuel's story. John is here to tell us exactly what it costs to walk away from the streets and why what he gained in the kingdom is worth infinitely more. John, is an absolute honor to have you today, and I thank you for joining us here at Imagination and Faith Ministries. And I want to start right from the beginning. You went from a life of looking over your shoulder in a gang to looking up to heaven as a Christian. Can you paint a picture for us today what your life looked like when you were in the gangs?
Well, first, good morning. I appreciate you having me on this week. And, to dive right into it, like you said, I think it actually looks different for different people because no matter what circle you're in, you have your different people. And what I mean by that is if you're in a company, you have the person that jokes a lot, you have the person that's real serious about business, you have the person that takes things too serious. Like you have a variety of personalities, and that's still the same in the street life. So like I said, it looked different for different people. I would say that for me, it actually looked like a norm. And what I mean by that is at the time of that, which was the 80s, 90s, that had become quickly a part of our culture just in general, where everyone was seeming to be involved in that. Television media was starting to promote that, and though they put it in movies and tried to say, well, this is, we just want to educate everybody. Well, it actually educated people to a point where that they learned more from it and got another understanding. And when everyone you're around all of a sudden embraces this lifestyle, you don't stop and think, is this something I should be doing or not doing? You just kind of end up, going with it.
So are you saying they basically glamorized it to the point where more people wanted to get involved with it? Is that what you're saying? Or
I would say that, but I would use the more normalized it to
I see.
This is what's happening, and it happened so fast. I mean, the neighborhood changed in the blink of an eye. It seemed like I'd probably say right around '89. All of a sudden, just it was different, and people just jumped right in, and it was like, I guess, man, it was overwhelming to think that something that drastic could happen that fast. And the reality is, a lot of people don't know this, but crack was at the center of it. Right. And that's what made people say, hey, I met people from California, Chicago, Detroit, and they came here because they knew that in Minnesota they was giving away all that welfare money, and they said, all the drug users get free money every month. So they came up there with the intention. We think about the internet and how news travels. Somehow it traveled to those places instantly and quickly. So they came up here, but part of what they brought was the gang culture, and they said, okay, well, we'll be your connection and we'll help you make this money. And they said, but you just have to be a part of what we are. And that was the general census for most people that got involved. Now, some of them had family members as well that came up, so that made it a little easier for them. And actually, in a little twist for us, the ones I was with actually was kind of their own family and their own thing. And so when the other people tried to influence that made us want to define ourselves in a greater way. And they had a family member that came up from out here in California he was a part of it, and so he told us, no, don't deal with them. We'll deal. We'll take care of you. We'll get you what you guys need. And so it became a who's, and what I mean by that is whoever you grew up with and whoever you knew, whoever's your family, that's what you would be with. It ain't like you sat around and you had a place to go pick your option and you picked one. It was just, these are my people, so this is what I do. If the same people would have lived in a different neighborhood, they would have said that they was claiming another gang. So it was all based on that. It wasn't where someone just decided, well, let me see, I want to be that. It was who you knew, where you lived, and you just stayed in that small circle.
So what do you think drew you into that? I mean, you were in at one time in life you weren't in it, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in it. What was it that you think got you not only involved but kept you involved?
Oh, it was very clear. I planned on being a sports player, and so once the summer came before my ninth grade season, I was ready to go be a ball player. I was where everything was focused at, and I broke some bones in my foot, and so my mom was like, "You, what if you had broke your leg? What if it?" Like she had this, she thought of the worst case scenario, and she said, "No, I'm not gonna let you do that." So all of a sudden, I went from okay, I hang out with the sports players to okay, now school starts. Who do I hang out with? The sports players. I'm not with them. Right. I'm not hanging out with the nerds because I didn't realize the value of that. So there was only the street people left. And because my brother, who was 10 years older than me, was already known in the streets, but it wasn't for gangs. It was for the other stuff that comes with the streets back in those days. Right. And they knew me because we all grew up together. So it wasn't like I had to go find a new batch of friends. I just chose which friends I was going to choose to hang out with more on a consistent basis. And as I started doing that, eventually some people saw me with them and took that as, oh, okay, well, I saw you with them, and they jumped me. Wow. So when that happened, and you have no one to talk to about it, I couldn't go home and tell my parents that would have went left. So there was really no one to tell, so I was just left to deal with it, and Satan used that to infuse me with hatred towards that particular.
Remember to visit Omarrogers Imagination and Faith podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, and Buzzsprout. You will find continuous inspiration and motivation to live life the way God designed it to be lived.
Okay.
Right. And then did that trigger your membership or whatever they call that?
No.
With the other?
No, actually, I was actually told by them, because this was on a Friday. I went to school Monday, and I was told by them, there's nothing we could do. You ain't a part of this. And being internal like I am and growing up in a household where conversations weren't normal to have, where you talked about life, feeling nothing, I just had to internalize it. I just said, it is what it is. But I don't have the sports players. I'm not with the nerds. So I'm still hanging out. And eventually, after, a few more weeks past that, they was like, dude, if you're going to keep hanging out with us, man, you might as well just come on. And so that's when I just, in my own reasoning, just said, I am with them every day and all this is happening, so forget it. And plus, I still had that hate that I allowed to be in my heart towards other groups. So that helped to still fuel that decision as well. But in those days, you couldn't just say, well, today I choose to, so I actually had to let one of the older guys know, and then you had to go into this field and get jumped in. So
right, so you got jumped in, and that was kind of the start of your affiliation with the gang life.
Yeah.
Right. So what was your mindset? Let's go a couple months, 90 days past that jump in moment. How would you describe your mindset, or did you see a shift in the way you thought when you were with athletics, as opposed now with the gang, or were there just some carryover that you took from athletics to the gang, or?
Yeah, I'd say extreme carryover, because now you take the same dedication you had to the team you were on and to what you were doing, which was the sport, and say, okay, well, now I'm on this team. Right. I'm involved, and it gave you a sense of, okay, I'm with them every day. This is what we do. This is how you do it. Just embracing that same team kind of concept. It just was on the team that wasn't going to lead you nowhere.
Right. What kind of activities would you describe? I'm not saying you got to name names or anything like that, but when you look at a sports team, we know teams go out together, teams, they roll together, they build a sense of family. What were the activities that you were describing in the gang that contributed to a sense of family for you and the other members?
Well, I say there was a mixture. There was everyday kid stuff. There was times where we'd all get together, go to local gyms, play basketball, sit down and play video games a couple hours at any given time. So there was an average kid things, teenage things, but then there was also let's go to this party, let's go to this place where we know it wasn't a party where we said, oh, it's just going to be relaxed. We would know because there's certain parties that people that live that life, that was what drew their interest. And then, of course, you add the drugs and alcohol into it. That becomes a norm where you're doing that with people. And it gives you the sense of this experience is amazing because of the influence that the stuff has on you. when really it's not, but somehow you're allowed to believe, man, this is crazy. We just had this happen. We just did this. And actually you embrace it to the point that you kind of look forward to and expect it to happen again. And so you sought out situations that would allow for things to be kind of hectic, and then you see it on TV and you're just like, this is what we do. This is how we go all together. And you just develop like the team. You're supposed to come out of the tunnel all together in one jersey and one thing, unified. No matter when you're on the road, you stick better. So where we grew up at, there was something. It's hard to explain, but it was something that was just like we're the few, and the other groups were the majority, and feeling like, oh yeah, it's just a few of us, but yeah, we still out here. There was an ego pride that came with that. That was that the enemy wanted to use to puff ourselves up.
So did you have any encounters with that other group, that jumped you initially? Now you're in a gang, you're part of this gang family. How do you guys interact with other gangs or other teams, if we use that analogy, when you ran across them or members of the other team?
Well, the amazing thing, at least where we was at, because some different states have different ways they may function, but the amazing thing was it was no rhyme or reason. It wasn't like, oh, okay, well, we see this group, it's automatically going to happen. Where you get in places like where we're at here in California, where back in those days, you saw somebody and it probably just the fact that you saw them said, here's the issue.
Right.
But where we was at was so small, you couldn't function without seeing them. For one, our school was on their side of the highway, so we had to go through their areas every day to and from school. Obviously, on the way to school wasn't an issue because people was sleeping, but when you came back from school, they was all out there, and you had to walk through that every day. You never know, is today gonna be that day?
Yeah, that's go ahead.
I'll go back to the drugs and alcohol. I'll say way more stuff kicked off at night than it did, like, say, a regular afternoon or early evening.
Right.
And it was like once everybody got congregated in the same space under the influence, even if there wasn't an issue, all it took was one person to feel some kind of way, and everything went left quick, fast, in a hurry.
Right. Let me ask you this next question. What was the exact moment, or what you might call the turning point, where Jesus interrupted your path, shattered your old vision, and ultimately captured your heart?
What's amazing about God is people think that you have to already be having some kind of relationship with him for him to be directing your steps. Now, I understand the scripture says the steps of the righteous are ordered by me, but he doesn't say only. I look at things that happen and I say, there's no way, there's countless times where you cannot make up a reason how the situations turned out the way they did. There's just no natural reasoning to it. But you don't realize it at the time. You just chalk it as, got away with one. And you just go on about your life.
Now, can you give us an example of where you felt, why didn't I just get killed at that moment? Why didn't I die? Is that something that you experienced?
Yeah. So, I mean, man, unfortunately, there's a lot of them. Not just the getting killed, but where I was caught at raids, where I was just moments from having too much drugs to, I'd have been in prison. But the one that sticks out the most was that time when I got shot those 9 times. And I remember that it was a surreal moment. Like, you can't really explain it. It's not like what people would think on the outside. Something about your inner self, a shock happens, and you actually go into like time slows down.
Wow.
Everything's just so, I mean, you don't really think like the person maybe watching on a TV show thinks. No, something happens to you. So that was the first time when the Lord, spoke to me in a way that I knew he was speaking, and told me that I was to believe in him, and I was supposed to tell people about him. So those were 2 mandates he gave me at that time. The ironic part was he knew that I wouldn't use that as a turning point in my life. In fact, Satan used it to say, look at this. You've been jumped, you've been shot, you've been this, that. And you got this false sense of invincibility that creeps into your mindset. And you get a different level of so-called respect from those around you. Yeah, homie been through this or that. And all of a sudden, you get this clout that is obviously not, is evil. And so But so in that experience, and when the doctor told me, hey, you should have been pronounced dead in that ambulance, we have no logical explanation for how you're here. That was the first point. But then God started using things. There were so many other times where death was right there staring at me, and the Lord was saying, nope.
So were you still, after that shooting incident, you basically stayed with the gang family, or did you?
Yeah, for another 3 years.
Wow. Okay, so you're right.
And had many near-death situations.
Wow, what a compelling story, and we're not done yet. Please come back for the second episode, From Gangs to Christ, the John Emmanuel story. You will be blessed to hear how God's radical grace changed John's life forever. Remember to visit Omarrogers Imagination and Faith podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, and Buzzsprout. You will find continuous inspiration and motivation to live life the way God designed it to be lived.